Hall, and I'm going to call the Middleton Common Council meeting for Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 to order. And the first item on the agenda is the roll call.
Burke.
Here.
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 Patrick.
Here.
Ramsey.
Here.
Shard.
Here.
Teal. West.
Present.
Present.
Okay, this is a very special day in Middleton. Today we are going to honor a great Middleton citizen who has served our city for nearly 48 years, longer than anyone has ever done or ever will. Remember, our city is only 54 years old. This gentleman is Warren Giebert. Warren, could you please stand up? So I know you. So Warren has served with all mayors except one. And we hope he will continue to serve with many mayors to come. And the city and businesses, they recognize their employees after 5 years, 10 years. And city has many commissions and committees, and we have not done this. And I'm going to start this, and this is long overdue. Somebody serving on a commission for nearly 48 years, and this is the time to recognize him. So I just calculated the time that if we add the service of all the city council, it adds up to just about what Warren has done. So it's about 50 years. I added the time, and he has served 48, which is really amazing. I didn't know Howard had served maybe a little bit longer. So, so I'm going to read the proclamation here now to begin with. So, honoring Warren Giebert for extraordinary service to the city of Middleton. The Water Sources Management Commission was created in the fall of 1973 under Mayor Walter Bowman, the second one there, having a very broad purview over water sources issues. Warren Giebert was among the 7 inaugural members appointed to the Water Source Management Commission and has served continuously as a member ever since, a tenure spanning nearly 4.5 decades. And by the mid-70s, Warren was elected as chair of the commission and has remained in that capacity to the present day. And Warren has guided the commission to frame and pursue its mission to promulgate rigorous standards for stormwater management. And his capacity as a Wisconsin District Chief of the U.S. Geological Survey, Warren oversaw research programs to study the impacts of urbanization on public waterways and to publish reports on the findings of those studies. And Warren, in his dual roles as chair and director, has used his technical and leadership skills to distill complex issues for city officials in a clear and concise form to enable policymakers to implement effective regulations to mitigate adverse impact of urbanization and ensure the long-term protection and preservation of the city's water sources. His gift for communication, along with his unflappable disposition and professional manner, has created an atmosphere at public meetings of the Water Sources Management Commission that enables citizens to voice their concerns with confidence, and those concerns will be heard and considered. Here's he has served 48 years. So, and here's a partial list of commission's accomplishments under Warren's leadership. And it includes creation in 1979 of the state's first erosion control and stormwater control ordinance, the first in the state. And then implementation of a fee in lieu system to allow for reasonable exceptions to constructing on-site stormwater controls, and development of a city-wide stormwater management plan. And then incorporation of infiltration practices long before such practices were required by the ordinance. Determination through data and cost analysis that the city's confluence pond remains one of the region's most cost-effective sediment control facilities. An extensive historical record of continuous flow monitoring in the Pheasant Branch, and laying the groundwork for the creation of city's stormwater utility. Whereas a full acknowledgement of Warren's vital contribution to protecting our community's water sources is long overdue. Now, therefore, as Mayor of the City of Middleton, I hereby proclaim, honor, and commend Warren Gibbert for his distinguished career of public service to the city, and declare December 5th, 2017 to be the Warren Gibbert Day in Middleton, and extend to him on behalf of the city's officials and its citizens a deep and sincere expression of gratitude for his selfless commitment to the betterment of the community and for the residents. It is fitting on this auspicious occasion to recall an ancient saying: each generation will reap what the former generation has sown. Warren's legacy of service will ensure that our children and grandchildren will reap a bountiful harvest indeed. This proclamation was adopted by the Middleton Common Council on the 5th day of December 2017. Before we make the presentation, I'm going to ask Professor Ken Potter to say a few words. Now, well, everybody knows Ken Potter. He has done an amazing job as a professor at UW in water sources, in limnology, and many other issues. So, Ken.
Thank you. I won't say too much, but I really am excited that Warren received this honor. When I came here in 1978, Warren got me on the commission, and it was one of the best things I ever did because I learned a lot over the years. Warren brought a lot of expertise to this job, and he also brought the U.S. Geological Survey and made them available, and they've helped Middleton a lot over the years. There have also been some really other outstanding committee members during that time, very impressive group of people. And in addition to the expertise Warren brought, I think the most important thing was you have to realize when you have that many experts, they're going to disagree, and sometimes pretty argumentatively. So Warren was able to control that and to always get good resolution. I think Middleton is fortunate. I think they have some of the most effective water resource management situations in the whole state, maybe even in the country. They've led the way in a number of things, and Warren has had a lot to do with that. So, cheers.
Now let's give a big hand to Warren here. And we have the cookies and I didn't know how many people would be there. If you don't have it, I got more in my office there. Let's give a big hand to this day. Yeah, you can maybe go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the honor. Maybe I just don't know when to quit. It didn't seem like it's been that long, but I'm working as a volunteer still at USGS. I'm going on 60 years with them, so I guess I don't know how to quit. I never thought I would be on the commission this long. It seemed like we went from one large issue to another, like the stormwater ordinance, to the confluence pond, to the stormwater utility, and they took a long time to get them done and never seemed like it was the right moment to quit. The Commission and Middleton have accomplished a lot in reducing the sediment and phosphorus loads to Lake Mendota and Pheasant Branch Conservancy. I'm glad that I've been able to be a part of that improvement. Before the stormwater management structures were constructed, including the confluence pond in 2002, Pheasant Branch had the highest contributing loads of sediment and phosphorus to Lake Mendota. Since 2002, Pheasant Branch now has over 100. Since 2002, Pheasant Branch now has one of the lowest loads of contributing sediment and phosphorus to the lake. With over 100 stormwater management practices in place, the sediment phosphorus loads have been reduced from 12,000 pounds per year to 6,000 pounds per year, and the sediment load has been reduced 45% from 2,600 tons per year to 1,400 tons per year. Middleton has been fortunate, like Ken said, to have a lot of talented and dedicated people willing to serve the Water Resource Management Commission. And one of the best things I did was persuade Ken Potter to be on the commission. Ken has been on the commission almost as long as me. His expertise has been extremely valuable in helping the commission receive its goals. While we have been fortunate to have many talented people on the commission in the past, our present membership of Ken Potter, Dan Ramsey, Dave Baltus, Matt Richards, Jim Bachhuber, Gene Whitish, and Gary Huth is good as it's ever been. Gary has been extremely valuable. He has filtered the issues and set the agenda so we can focus on the more important items to Middleton. And during the meetings, he has framed the issue with many of which are complex problems, so we have a good understanding of the problem. Thanks again for the recognition. I hope I can continue to serve in the future.
I would move approval of the proclamation.
Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And let's recognize his son there as well, if you want to, both of you stand up. And and this, and Ken Potter, let's recognize three of these people again. One. And it was Gary Huth and Ken who helped me write this proclamation, so. Pardon me? Okay, so the next one is at 7:35, and it's a public hearing. The first item is Pheasant Branch Road vacation at 6720 Frank Lloyd Wright Avenue. So anybody who wants to speak in favor or against the motion? Anybody who wants to speak? If there are no speakers, I'm going to close that public hearing and then go to the second public hearing. And the second public hearing is a request for rezoning of property from agricultural to planned development district general implementation plan at 5821 Unken Road. This is the Early Childhood Learning Center proposed by Bob Davis. Anybody who wants to speak either in favor or against? Okay, if there's no one wants to speak, I'm going to close that part of the public hearing. Now we are lucky today that we have our Dane County Executive, Joe Parisi, he's here. And he's going to make a presentation here for all of us. Joe Parisi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for giving us a little bit of time tonight to
give you an update on Clean Lakes initiative that we have undertaken at the county that we feel is important enough that we've been going around the county talking to people about it, and we want to make sure and give you an update. And it's really an honor to be able to be doing this on the night when you're recognizing Warren and recognizing the contributions that municipalities have made and are making to our Clean Lakes efforts. I think that's important because when we look at the cause of the challenges our lakes face, they're twofold. There are urban sources of sediment and phosphorus, and there are rural sources. And so these are some great examples of the initiatives being taken place in more urban settings. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about a major initiative that we're taking in a more rural setting. With me are John and Kyle from our Lakes and Water Resources Department. And after I give a brief introduction, they'll take folks through the process that we're undergoing right now. I also want to recognize Supervisor Paul Nelson is here today. Paul, I saw you a second ago right there. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it very much. This is a county initiative which includes my office and the county board and all of the staff included. So we really appreciate all of the support that everyone's given us. So briefly as possible, again, as we know, the main challenge that leads to the algae problems that we have in our lakes is phosphorus load. Roughly 1 pound of phosphorus can become up to 500 pounds of algae. And phosphorus has many sources, urban and rural. And many of the rural sources come from agriculture and come from, phosphorus is a needed nutrient, but when there's phosphorus runoff and there's too much phosphorus in our lakes, we have some of the challenges we have. Now, over the years, we've developed some fantastic partnerships with our farm families, and we have great leadership in the farm community in Dane County in helping to implement and come up with new practices to implement to reduce phosphorus runoff. Our farmers are some of the best stewards of the land, and they're great partners. We could not be doing this work without them. And a lot of our work is focused near Middleton in the North Mendota watershed, Springfield, Wanakee, Vienna, Westport, because as you probably know, we're a chain of lakes, and everything that goes into Lake Mendota goes through the entire chain of lakes. So we really want to focus at the main source. We have to address it watershed wide, but where it's really vital is in this area here. So we have partnerships with our farmers that look at things like increasing cover crops, planting buffer strips between streams and fields, and a number of other practices that have been shown to reduce phosphorus runoff, and we're making great progress. But with every initiative and every initiative that you go forward with, it's important to measure, because we want to make sure that the places we're investing our time and resources in are giving us the results we're looking for, which is less phosphorus. So as part of this this work, our folks in Land and Water Resources, and they work with the DNR and other partners, and the U.S. Geological Service have monitored, and one of the creeks we monitored in was Dorn Creek up by Highway M toward Westport, to see if we were getting the phosphorus reduction that the science tells us we should be getting from our initiatives. And what they found, and they'll go into much more detail when they start, is that we weren't getting the reductions that we should have been getting from everything we were doing upstream. So these folks dug a little further, did a little more science, and made a discovery that we were sort of aware of, but didn't really realize and didn't grasp the impact of until we dug a little deeper, literally and figuratively. And what we found was that a lot of the challenges we have with phosphorus getting into our system come from sediment and phosphorus that's already in the stream beds, that is accumulated over up to a century, long before we had the current modern farm practices that are implementing practices to reduce runoff. That runoff has gone into streams, and in some cases it's up to 4 feet thick, up to 100 years old of sediment. And in this sediment, it has what we refer to as legacy phosphorus. That's phosphorus that's been in there for a long time. And when you think of it, that the water's running right over that sediment every time it flows. So regardless of what is or isn't going up on upstream, we have all of this sediment and this phosphorus that's feeding up, that's coming up through the soil and going right into the lakes. And so the conclusion that we came to was that until we address that sediment, that phosphorus that's already in the lakes, or in the streams, it's been accumulating for decades, we're not going to be able to see the results of all of the good work that we're doing upstream. So last year we did a pilot program where we went in and we removed, was it a mile worth or
Small stretch, 250 feet.
250 feet of that sediment, of that muck, to test the feasibility of it, see if it would work, how it would work, to make sure there weren't any unintended consequences. And what our analysis shows us is that we believe we've identified about 33 miles of stream bed that has this muck in it, and that we believe we can go in and take it out. And so our pilot showed us that we can do that. So we have a program that's going to be a 4-year, $12 million program that's going to go in and remove that muck through hydraulic suction. The Wisconsin State Journal has coined the term "suck the muck." It's not not too pretty, but it does basically tell you what we're going in and doing. And we're going to suck the muck out of 33 miles of stream bed throughout the watershed, stream bed that has been identified as a problem area for this muck. And so again, we did the pilot last year, and the guys will take you through that a little bit. And right now we're in the process of preparing for the first phase of this year. What we do, we wait till the end of the year when the water level's down a little bit. It's more ideal to go in there and get that. So the dollars that we're investing, the $12 million, we estimate about $9 million of that will go directly for the sucking the muck and everything we have to do to make sure that we're putting that in a place where it's not going to get back into the system. And then about $3 million for habitat restoration, because there are a lot of areas now, like when you drive down Highway M, go up toward Westport, and you drive over those streams, it looks like a nice wetland, and that looks all good, but it's really not. It's choked, it's monoculture, it has invasives in it, and so what we want to also do is do our best to restore that habitat, create new fisheries, have much better biodiversity there. And then the guys will go into a lot more detail about how we plan to do that, what we're going to do with the stuff once we suck it out, the restoration, and then our plans to make sure that it doesn't just fill up again, too, to make sure that we're taking a holistic approach. And again, this combined with the efforts that we're doing on the urban level and the continuing partnerships that we have with farms, throughout the watershed now, we're expanding beyond the North Mendota watershed, are really what we need to do to get to the source of the problem and to address this. I know as so many people here, I've lived here all my life and seen these lakes, for so long we ask, what's wrong with our lakes? Why are they like this? Well, due to the good work of Ken Potter and folks like that, we know now what the challenges are, and the county is fortunate enough to be part of a coalition that's moving forward and addressing this. So I'm going to turn it over next to Kyle Minks from our Land and Water Resources Department. He's going to give you a little background on our efforts and take you through, and then when he and John are done, we would be happy to, any of us, answer any questions that you have. So thanks again for giving us the time to come here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, thanks, Executive Parisi. So we're going to provide you with a little bit of background kind of on the project that Executive Parisi went into kind of detail and some summaries of what we found. So just to start out here a little bit, to give you an idea of where the watershed is that we're talking about, Dorn Creek. It's kind of located here on the northern side of Lake Mendota, right here. And it kind of stretches all the way from the west and then kind of drains towards the east, and then before it enters into Lake Mendota. And on the western side of the watershed is actually pretty steep. It's characterized kind of as some steep topography. It's got some fairly decent slopes. But then as we move closer towards the lake, it really starts to flatten out the stream itself, and it has kind of a low gradient is what we would call, or low flow as before entering into Lake Mendota. Zooming in a little bit closer here, just to give a little more context, we have kind of highways Q, here's K, and then there's highway M over here. And this watershed was selected for primarily two reasons. The first one is that we've got 2 USGS monitoring stations on it currently, and those stations will continue to be in operation for the foreseeable future, at least 5, probably more like 10 years. And so we're able to get nice real-time flow data or real-time information as rain events are occurring, and collect different types of water samples looking at the different phosphorus concentrations, total suspended solids, and other constituents within that water during different events. The other main reason this watershed was selected was that it's got a long history of upland or rural types of agricultural conservation practices. And what that is that the county has worked with a lot of different agricultural producers in this watershed to do different types of practices ranging from cover crops to different tillage practices to addressing things on their livestock facilities. They really focus in on trying to keep the soil and the nutrients on the land and in place and prevent them from getting to nearby surface water. To kind of dive in a little bit deeper on some of that, here's some kind of numbers that we pulled together over the years. We really had a really focused kind of production livestock inventory that was done way back in kind of the early 90s. And at that time, we identified roughly, I believe there's 50 facilities here on this map. And since then, we've worked at addressing 60% of them. And what that means is we've worked with the agricultural producers to find solutions in their operation. Some of them could be like roofs over their livestock facilities to prevent that water coming in contact with that manure and then running off. So what this does is when the rainwater hits the roof, it runs off the side and doesn't come into contact with those nutrients or manure, and then can be conveyed to the stream in a more stable fashion. Other things that we do include gutters or diversions to try to take a lot of that water around the livestock facility. And so we continue to work with those producers that remain in that kind of 40%, but also some of them are located in areas that are starting to see some urban growth. So we've got Middleton down here to the south and Wanakee to the north, and both of those communities are growing. And so we don't want to just put a solution in place that doesn't work for the producer, and we also kind of want to work with them to see if maybe they're going to transition out of livestock. Maybe they're looking at moving out of agriculture in general, or maybe shifting towards more of a land rental kind of situation. And so we really want to make sure that we don't put a solution in place that maybe won't be needed in the future. So it kind of takes some time to develop. Other areas that we looked at extensively was the actual cropland itself. And within this watershed, we've got roughly 6,000 acres of cropland. And to date, we've worked with producers on getting what we call conservation plans on roughly 5,400 acres. So over 90% of the fields or agricultural land in this watershed, we've worked with those producers to put things in like agricultural buffers that you see here along the stream corridors, grassed waterways or rock-lined waterways, and then also things like changes in tillage practices to reduce tillage to prevent soil disturbance, cover crops, different crop rotations. There's a whole suite of options that producers and agricultural production facilities can use to try to keep those nutrients in that soil in place. One of the conservation practices that we kind of promote and recommend that's got an indicator in it that kind of helps us gauge how much phosphorus is leaving the agricultural fields is called a nutrient management plan. And we were able to go back and look at our records that we had available to us in our department, and we had plans on roughly 75% of those agricultural acres that were out there. So we didn't have plans on all 90%, but it doesn't mean that they don't have plans. It just means that we didn't have them available in our office to kind of look at and review. One nice thing about those nutrient management plans is they have what's called the phosphorus index. And what that is kind of a measurement. It goes through some calculations based on the management and nutrients that are applied to those fields and lets us know how much phosphorus is leaving the edge of those fields and getting to nearby surface water. We have kind of a performance standard or target index that we're shooting for. We'd like to see all the agricultural land in the county to be at a phosphorus index of 6 or less, and that's also kind of about 6 pounds per acre per year or less. And when we looked at the plans that we had available and the types of practices and tillages that were going on out there, we see that those producers actually have a phosphorus index of 3. So that's kind of half that target standard, or another way of looking at it is those producers are doing 2 times better than what the target is that we're shooting for, which is great. We'd love to see those levels very low, because that's kind of directly related to water quality is what we're looking at. And so the lower that those levels are, the less likely it is that that phosphorus is getting to that nearby surface water. In addition to the phosphorus index, we can also look at the amount of soil that's being lost, or the amount of soil that's getting off of those fields into nearby surface water. And what we have is called a tolerable soil loss. Once again, it's kind of like that index that I mentioned before with the phosphorus index. We have what's called a tolerable soil loss of around 4 tons per acre, and that's just the average based on the soil types that we have in this particular watershed. And when we looked at what the actual soil loss based on those crops and tillages that are being grown out there, we see that it's around 1.8. So once again, it's about half of that target, or they're doing 2 times better than what the target standard is that we're shooting for. So with that, we kind of decided to look at a little bit of the water quality data that we had from those USGS gauges that we had collecting water samples over the past 3 years. And what we expected to see was maybe some lower concentrations and lower values, but actually what we saw here, and this is just kind of a graph showing the typical water year from October all the way to September, the total phosphorus loads coming through this gauge here at Highway M. And so the green bars represent dissolved phosphorus, and that's the portion of phosphorus that's actually in the water itself. And then the kind of the brown bar that represents the particulate phosphorus, or the phosphorus that's actually bound to the soil or sediment particles that would be in the water as it moves through the gauge. And when you combine those two together, that makes up the total phosphorus. And what we found actually was that roughly 55% of the load, or 55% of that total phosphorus coming through those gauges, is in that dissolved form. And that kind of shocked us, because that's really the phosphorus that's the most hard to get at. So a lot of the practices that we were putting in on the uplands or in the agricultural portions of the watershed are really designed at trying to reduce that particulate fraction of the phosphorus. And we don't have a whole lot of conservation practices that we can put in that really focus at trying to get that dissolved fraction. And so when we kind of saw this water data, we started to ask ourselves a little bit, well, maybe what other sources of phosphorus may be contributing to this dissolved fraction that we see there. And John's going to go into a little more detail about that here shortly. But just on another side note, one of the other things we look at besides just the total loading or the amount of phosphorus coming through is concentrations. And just to kind of give you guys a reference of where things are at in the watershed, we've got this statewide target that we kind of shoot for, where we'd like to see how many milligrams per liter or concentration of total phosphorus in the streams we'd like to see. And that's around 0.075 milligrams per liter. And right now, based on the water quality that we have, we're at about 3 times that concentration. And so that was another trigger that kind of got us thinking, well, maybe what other sources are there out there in this watershed are causing this much phosphorus? If we've got all these conservation practices out there and this really high performance as far as soil loss and phosphorus indexes, there may be something else going on. John's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. So what I'm going to show you is a lot of the study that we did to look at what is the role of phosphorus in the stream sediments. Executive Parisi gave a good background on the project, and I'm here to show you a little bit of the cartoons and the pictures of what this really looks like. So the first picture here is, imagine this is a picture of a crop field and a stream running through it. And these orange dots that I show on the figure there represent, sediment or nutrients that would be on the farm field. And when it rains, what do those do? Those go downstream. Some of them may sit in the stream until the storm can flush it further down. But nonetheless, they move through from the field to the stream. In a case like this, as Kyle was talking about, what would we want to do? We would want to put some conservation practice on this farm field so we prevent that nutrients from running off. Or in other words, we would want to put, for example, a buffer strip along the stream here. So when we would have these nutrients that's on the farm field, for example, these four dots there, when it rains, we would capture or collect those nutrients in that filter strip. The filter strip then could grow on them, and it's not delivered to the stream. It may not be 100% effective, but yet we are trapping what we can through these conservation practices. So the question is, what about all this stuff that's in our stream before we had conservation practices, before we started implementing practice? What's the role of all this sediment and nutrients that's already sitting in our stream sediments? And what we call this is legacy phosphorus. It's sitting there from a while back, and now what is that role that's causing with us? So we set out to do a study and do some measurements. And the picture here shown is a cross-section of a stream. The dark brown section here represents the sediment muck that's been accumulating over the time. And what we want to measure is this dark brown area. What's the role of all that sediment in that stream? So what we set out to do is measure how much phosphorus is in the water. Then what we did is we took sediment cores, and what we did is partition those cores into different soil layers and figured out how much phosphorus is in these sediments. So here's us, we partition it out, we want to measure how much phosphorus is there. And then what we wanted to do was to say, well, just because we have phosphorus in the sediments doesn't mean it's a water quality problem unless it can become into the water. If it just sits there and doesn't go anywhere, it may not cause water quality downstream, for example, to Lake Mendota or somewhere. So what we wanted to measure was how much of this phosphorus in the sediments is diffusing out into the water. So how much P, what we call it P diffusion, goes into the water. So here's a picture where I show our sediment cores. There's 4 of them stacked together. And what we do is we take the water that's in the stream, this water, and we place it on top. It's this light green color. And what we're doing in the laboratory is measuring out how much of that phosphorus is diffusing out, or in other words, it's getting more green. So what we want to see is how much of phosphorus is coming from those stream sediments and leaching out into the water. Okay, so before I summarize all the results, I want to show you a video of what Dorn Creek looks like. And this is Mike Sorge with DNR. DNR has helped us out significantly on this project. And this is very typical of what Dorn Creek looks like. This muck here, here he is measuring how much it is just with a ruler. So now he asks, can I get out of this thing? So very typical of Dorn Creek, all this muck sitting here. Even where he's at right now, he's in another 2 to 3 feet of it. Just easier to walk in the water part. But we looked at this and we started saying, well, what is the role of all this muck that's here? Is this a water quality problem? All right, so I summarized the results of all our sediment cores, which we had about 50 sediment cores, all onto one slide. So in terms of how much phosphorus is in the sediments, what we found is this average number of 5,000 parts per million or milligram per kilogram. But what does that mean? We also compared it to adjacent areas, and we looked at the adjacent crop fields. Those had a number of 700 parts per million. So in other words, the stream sediments were 7 times more concentrated. The other thing to note is on the crop field, as Kyle talked a lot about, is there's still an opportunity to do a conservation practice. So we can prevent that. This is already in our stream. And we did measure a barnyard which had a phosphorus amounts up to 10,000, so which was pretty much pure manure. But nonetheless, our average value is 5,000. We did have some as high as up to 10,000. So what we found here is the amount of phosphorus is very abundant in the stream sediments. So we took our study site area, which is between Highway M and Q, Dorn Creek, 2.3 miles, and took all our sediment cores and found that there's about 75,000 pounds of phosphorus in 2 miles. And to put that in perspective, the annual load to Lake Mendota is about 70 to 80,000 pounds. So we have that much sitting in 2 miles of our stream reach. So the last test that we did was how much phosphorus diffuses out of these stream sediments. And after all this work, we took all our data together, and what we found was that the average diffusion rate coming out was 0.075 milligram per liter. So what's interesting is what Kyle mentioned at the end of his slides was we have a water quality target we're shooting for. And what we found out is this actually equals the water quality standard. So the stream sediments alone are giving off enough what the water quality standard is. So we can't have any more flow. We need to block everything off. And if we can magically do that, we would still be at our water quality standard. So in other words, these are diffusing out phosphorus out of the stream sediments. Okay, so well, we wanted to take all this data and ask ourselves a couple questions. And we know we have all this abundant phosphorus. So if we keep it there, how long until we see water quality improvements? Right? It keeps diffusing out and bleeding out. How long is it going to take? And we know how much phosphorus we have in the sediments, a mass of phosphorus. We know what rate it diffuses. And we did just some simple math to figure out the time it takes. And we found that it takes 66 years to diffuse out all that phosphorus out of the sediments. Well, we still have phosphorus, as I mentioned, coming in from the watershed, from the agriculture, from urban areas. In the Yahara Clean report tells us that the science tells us that if we reduce 50% of the upland phosphorus, we will reach our water quality goals. So in other words, we still have 50% of the phosphorus coming in, and taking that into account, it actually take us 99 years before we can get rid of all that phosphorus. So the next question we wanted to ask ourselves, well, maybe we can go in and remove it. Well, if we go in and remove it, is it just going to fill back in the next year? So what we did is we did some aging of the sediments, and we wanted to ask ourselves, well, how old are these legacy phosphorus in our sediments? And we did some age dating and used lead-210 as well as some other isotopes to figure this out. But in general, I will summarize it that if you go a foot down in this muck, it's 25 years old. If you go 2 feet down, it's 75 years old. And what we found is at the bottom of this is about 100, 120 years old, and it's an old, what we believe is the original stream bed, which is sand and gravel bottom. We hit a nice hard sand gravel bottom at the bottom of all this. So in other words, this area has been just accumulating over all the years, just keeps accumulating. And as Kyle mentioned in his talk, this is a low gradient system. Things tend to slow down here, and the sediments want to settle out in this area. So this has been nothing less than a trap, big sediment trap in the stream. So what we did next was we removed the sediment in a small stretch, 250 feet. And what we wanted to test is how environmentally sound is removing the material. So the green line represents our removal area, and how we did this is we did hydraulic dredging from here and took a pipeline to the upland land. And here's a couple pictures of what this looks like. Here's our staff out in the stream, our lake management staff. Here with the hydraulic, here's the suction hose, and here's the pump, and then that would pump the material upland to our dewatering bag site where we could collect it and trap all that material. And then what we do at the end is seed it all over and permanently vegetate it. So some of our pictures that we had, what it looked like before is this, you saw the video, this mucky bottom, a lot of vegetation in here. And then after, we had this sand gravel bottom, and then we saw habitat turtles swimming in here. So we saw, improvement in that. And Kyle happened to get a great picture, zoomed in picture of the turtle. So he was really happy. As Executive Precy mentioned in 2017, budget was to expand what we've done in Dorn Creek. Here's our pilot project at Dorn Creek, what we found, and to extend it to 33 miles. And beyond just removing the material, the sediments for phosphorus, we also want to look at other ways we can improve the habitat, restore the wetlands, reconnect the floodplains to some of these stream and wetland interactions. Overall, what we estimated is $12 million for the 33 miles, and what we estimate is the amount of phosphorus in the stream reaches about 870,000 pounds. So quite an abundant amount of phosphorus. In the fall this year was our first project to extend the 250 feet and do 2.3 miles. That's ongoing right now. We had we went through the plans, permitting process with DNR. Here's a latest picture at the bottom here. That's the dewatering site that they're constructing. So it's a huge dewatering site, much larger than what we had before because we're doing 2.3 miles. And this used to be an old gravel pit, all filled with invasive Japanese knotweed and species that we wanted to fix this up as well. And it was an old gravel pit, so sediments weren't good there. And we're going to use this material, restore it back to a prairie, which is connected to the DNR land, which is all prairie area in there, and improve the habitat there. So other benefits besides just removing the stream sediments that we also look forward with this project. So right now, if you are interested in more about the project as we ongoing, we have a website that we created on our Land and Water Resources Department page, which gives updates about where we are in the project, where we're moving to next. And if you, right here's the website, but if you're looking for more, you can talk to Kyle or myself. We can provide it to you. And then at the bottom here, these are all the agencies that helped us with this project. So a lot of acknowledgments: DNR, UW, Public Health, State Lab of Hygiene, USGS, MMSD. So several people have helped us with this project. We're very grateful for and the help with all our partners. So with that, if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Yeah, I will start. And so what are you, this material which you are removing, John, is so rich. So what are you doing with it?
Yeah, so on Dorn Creek, what we were doing with it is there was an adjacent old abandoned gravel pit that the Dane County owned, and it was filled with box elder, Japanese knotweed, just a lot of invasive species that was difficult to maintain because it was just a gravel pit and the soils weren't good there. So we're using that gravel pit and taking this material and filling it into that gravel pit area, and then we're going to seed it over with prairie seed, which the DNR land all is adjacent to us, which all has prairie seed, or prairie, and it'll be an extension of that, which there's pheasant hunting there and a lot of other things that ongoing through that prairie.
Thank you. More questions for John or Kyle or Dane County Executive? Yeah, Robert.
If you, so you say it's like a 4-year project to do all of this, and after 4 years, let's say we didn't do anything again, how long, with all the other practices and trying to prevent, cut down 50% of the phosphorus from other sources from coming back in, how long would it take to get right back to where we are today? Like the same 4 feet of muck in there.
Yeah, so what we found with the age data is what we have now is 100 years of accumulation. So, that's the age data that we have looking at that. We also anticipate that what we're doing on the upland is preventing it, and what we're doing now is cleanup.
Got it.
So two things that we're trying to do kind of together in tandem now is not just stop what's on the upland and prevent it, which we have been doing a great job doing,
right,
but now it's cleanup. What can we do now and get that stuff out of there that was there because of past practices? Now we have the prevention and the practices upland, and that will then hopefully extend the time that it takes to fill up. Other than that, what we're looking at doing, and Ken Potter was just here a while ago, working with him to look at how can we take these areas that we clean up and strategically place traps upstream, so that way this 2.3 whole mile stretch that we cleaned out stays clean for a long time, and for us maintaining it is just maybe a trap by a culvert or something there that's easy for us to maintain.
Nice. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the other benefit about this site too is that we've got those 2 USGS monitoring gauges.
Yeah.
That was kind of the other reason we chose this one to go to first, because we'll have that data for the next 5 to 10 years too, and we plan to go back and do surveys and collect data to kind of get a gauge on how quickly stuff is reaccumulating too.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, Elizabeth.
In terms of aquatic ecosystems, when you are sucking up the muck, do you have some sort of way to stop tadpoles or other things from getting in, or how are you ensuring the survival of the aquatic ecosystems?
Sure. So we've worked, like we mentioned before, John did, we're working really closely with the aquatic biologists at DNR and their ecologists and some of their water quality specialists as well. Unfortunately, this system is highly degraded, as John kind of mentioned. It's got a lot of invasives. It doesn't have a lot of high-quality species, I guess, as we would look at them, or diverse ecosystems. And so we've kind of worked with them, and they don't feel we're going to have a huge impact on the species that are there, since most of them are kind of undesirable invasives to begin with. We also are avoiding kind of critical spawning periods as well, working with them. There will be times of the year when they prefer us not to be in there. We won't be able to be in there because of potential northern pike spawning. So we kind of have to work around some of those critical dates as well too. And then we're kind of they've also identified some areas that they want to see enhanced from some of the wetland systems that are already there too. So, yeah.
Other questions? Okay, now it's open to the audience. Do you want to ask, if anybody wants to ask question, please raise your hand.
Dr. Deep, I did have one.
Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned that the project plan is 33 miles. Have you identified all 33 miles that you're going to be working on?
Yeah, so John kind of pulled up that map. I don't know if you still got it there or not. So we've worked with DNR to identify these sites. As John had that wonderful video, most of those folks have walked them or won't walk them, and so they've helped us identify these critical areas. Our plan this winter is to also investigate with further cores and additional sampling to get an idea of what the phosphorus concentrations are in those other areas too.
It's difficult for me to see there. Are there any of those sites within the city of Middleton?
No, I don't think so. Yep.
Well, maybe a little bit part of the Dorn Creek upstream of Highway Q.
Yep.
A little bit there. I can read them out, all the streams. It may be hard to see. Dorn Creek, 6 Mile to the north, Yahara River, Tolkien Creek, 9 Springs, and Door Creek feeding into Lake Kaganza.
Thank you.
Pheasant Branch where
Yeah,
If we have thoughts on waterways we might would like to see investigated, will we just get in touch with you?
Yeah,
Yes.
if you think there's other sites, yes, please let us know.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody has any questions for these three folks? Okay, all right, so let's give them a big hand.
You got one.
Oh, there is, okay, please go ahead.
Are the farmers receptive to this because it's going through their land? I suspect they're excited.
Yeah, we've had a lot of positive feedback from them. We will definitely have to work with them to find sites in suitable areas. We've done a lot of testing of it. If we can reuse that and maybe use that as a kind of a fertilizer amendment on some of their fields, and they can have a benefit from it too, we would love to be able to put it back there. So it helps with a lot of logistics on moving it from one place to the other. So yeah, but the ones we've talked to about it have been highly receptive, and so we'll need that partnership when we start expanding beyond the areas we're at now, since most of it is adjacent to that cropland.
Okay, last chance. Anybody wants to ask any question? Okay, let's give these guys a big hand for. Thank you. And you guys know that Dane County Executive grew up in Middleton, not too far from here, about a mile. So, thank you. Okay, so the next part of the agenda is the comments from the citizen present. It's limited to 3 minutes, and Robert is going to keep track of the time. And I'm going to start with Ross Rickers.
I was just supporting something without.
Okay, it's registering in favor, yes, okay. This is also,
Could you read what he was in favor of for the record?
it doesn't, let's see,
The top.
It just says Pheasant Branch Road.
yeah.
I was just in favor of the Pheasant Branch Road vacation at 6720 Frank Lloyd Wright.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
okay, all right, so thank you. So the next one is Bruce Haller, again, he's registering in support without speaking. This is 7530 West.
Westward Way, that's in Madison.
So what do you want to say, what are you registering for, or?
I'm just here in support of the vacation, item number 1.
Okay, so the same thing. Okay, that's doesn't say whether they want to speak or not. Okay, there's a Darren Cylinder. Do you want to speak? It's about distracted walking. Yes. Please go ahead. Thank you. Yeah. Identify yourself and your address, and well, there are 4 of you. You got a lot more than 3 minutes. So.
We're about at 3 minutes, and we'll make it quick.
Okay.
My name is Darren Slendy. I'm a team manager of a group of 9th grade students from Middleton High School. And they've been working hard on a project, and for the community they think would be beneficial, and they're very excited to be here tonight to share it with you.
My name's Arbor Januzzi.
My name's Calvin Slendy.
Hi, my name is Pusha Prabhahar Sundar.
And my name is Sohail Sheikh. The problem: distracted walking, when a pedestrian uses a mobile electronic device while walking in a crosswalk or intersection.
Drivers distracted by their devices are a well-documented rising cause of traffic crashes, but there are also a growing number of pedestrians too who can become oblivious to traffic around them.
Scientists call this phenomenon inattentive blindness, saying that the human brain has evolved to only be able to adequately focus attention on one task at a time. So when you're texting or talking on the phone while trying to walk, you cannot give your full attention to both tasks.
The number of pedestrians killed in traffic jumped 11% last year to nearly 6,000, the biggest single-year increase in pedestrian fatalities ever.
Pedestrian vehicle injuries are the fifth leading cause of death for children ages 5 to 19.
Inattentive pedestrians were 40% more likely to get struck.
Common risks associated with distracted walking include injuring someone else, sprains, strains, fractures, cuts, bruises, concussions, brain or spinal cord injuries, and death.
Our proposed solutions. A law. No person shall cross the street or highway while using a mobile electronic device. On pages 3 to 5, you will find an actual bill from a city where this has been passed recently.
Or signs. Signs that adhere to concrete are placed on the ground at high traffic intersections and crosswalks to remind pedestrians who might be looking down at their phones to watch for traffic.
With either the law or sign solution, our team will create a public awareness campaign, for example, a local newspaper, high school, etc., to raise awareness for this problem. It is our opinion, based on our research and after numerous conversations with our peers at school, that public awareness campaign alone will not change behavior, which is why we have proposed signs or a law to stop distracted walking, in addition to a public awareness campaign.
Signs or a law will raise awareness about risky behavior, in this case distracted walking, limit that behavior, and will save lives.
The number of people who own smartphones continues to rise. 77% of adults in the U.S. own a smartphone. 92% of 18 to 29-year-olds own a smartphone. This problem is only getting worse.
We believe that common sense should prevail in situations such as distracted walking. However, that is not always the case. Even though it's common sense to wear a seatbelt while riding in a car and to not text while driving, sometimes laws are necessary to keep us safe. Thank you.
Right.
Great job.
Thank you very much for talking about that. I have a son who's in the Army and he's stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. And it's interesting that you bring that up because I called him one day and he said, "Dad, I can't talk." I said, "Why not, son?" He said, "I'm walking." While he's on, and I kind of thought it was kind of funny. But he said, "I'm on base, Dad, and when I'm on base, I cannot be walking and talking on the telephone at the same time." So the awareness that you're bringing is a good thing, and you're not the only ones who thought of it. The U.S. military thinks it's a good idea also.
Please, Chief, you want to say anything? No. Great job, guys. Well, this is helping you, so thank you, guys.
I would move approval to discuss it at License and Ordinance.
Okay, all right. So need a second?
Second.
I couldn't hear you. I couldn't either.
Move approval to refer this issue to License and Ordinance.
Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Great job, guys. So it will be looked by Ellen also. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so next one is Jim Blodgett. So he's going to speak in favor of Share the Path.
So I'm Jim Blodgett. I'm the chair and the district representative for the Pedestrian, Bike, and Transit Committee. And I wanted to publicly thank the Common Council for funding the engineering for the first segment of the path along Century Avenue. As we know, the walkability of a community has a significant impact on its health and well-being. And we also know that while on-street, or off-street, off-streets or segregated paths are much more safe than on-street. All bike facilities have a significant impact on the safety and well-being of vulnerable users and motorists. So I would like to thank you for taking this first step in designing this path, and we're really excited about this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So the next one is George Maroulis. Welcome to the City Hall, George.
It's great to be here, and I was really proud to see the work of the students there. I'm George Maroulis. I'm superintendent of the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District. First of all, thank you all for the extraordinary cooperation we enjoy with the City of Middleton. We are the envy of the state. I have spoken to many superintendents that tell me their school district and local municipality not only don't cooperate, they often work against each other. We share a wonderful partnership that benefits our citizens and taxpayers. I apologize for not being able to come and address you in November, since that would have been more timely. I want to briefly share with you the decision that was made by our Board of Education to not pursue the TIF property adjacent to the Parmenter Circle. You deserve to have the background information. We've had a facilities planning committee operating since September of 2016. This group of 20 citizens is driving our planning process and advising the Board of Education. This is an important part of our democratic process. The responsibility of this group is to generate and vet facilities options to meet the needs of our growing enrollment. During their meetings in September and October, the committee was able to analyze the viability of purchasing land in the TIF to build a new building as part of a high school campus. As they analyzed this option, these were the two main concerns that were raised. They discovered from the architect that the size of the building needed for high school programming and a capacity for 800 students may be too large to also accommodate a private sector building on that property. Second, student travel between buildings would be a challenge, especially during the winter. Passing periods are currently 7 minutes long. Having students leave their classroom, go to their locker to get their coats, and transition across the campus between buildings was not deemed feasible. There was also concerns raised about having hundreds of students outside passing each other, moving between buildings. This would require additional supervision. Currently, staff are in the hallways, and we have security cameras to monitor. For these reasons, the committee recommended to the Board of Education expansion of the current facility over constructing a separate building. Since the district requires a successful referendum in order to move forward with construction, the Board of Education decided to take the recommendation of the Facilities Planning Committee based on their analysis of the likely concerns that voters may have regarding this option. These 20 committee members represent our community, and their voices were heard. While this decision moves us away from the TIF parcel, the school district is still very interested in collaborating with the city and local businesses to provide meaningful, relevant learning experiences for our students, as you saw tonight. Internships, externships, and shared spaces are all going to be pursued. We look forward to our continued partnership with the City of Middleton. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next one is Spencer Schumacher.
Hi guys, thanks for having me tonight. Spencer Schumacher, 3809 Lexington Drive, Middleton. I also have my office at 6712 Frank Lloyd Wright. I'm here tonight just to say how excited I am for a potential trailhead on Pheasant Branch Creek. I think it's a great addition to the city. I have people in my office. It's right next to Prairie Cafe, if you don't know where the address is. And they come in there and like, how do I access Pheasant Branch? How do I get in there? And I'm like, well, you can walk from here, but there's really no trailhead, no access to it. I also am a big biker, and a potential connection underneath Century Avenue would be a great connection of our city to everything else. That loop is a dangerous intersection and a really awkward intersection. So I'm here just to speak in favor of it tonight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Spencer. So the next one is Alan Hamble. He didn't want to speak, but he wanted to say a few words about thank you for cleaning up some of the things. So do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate that you have a public hearing and that you have the resolution at the end of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So this is Jenny Deschamps. You like to speak? Okay, so that's the project architect. What is
Oh, the two inspired.
This is for the
events.
Inspire project, so. Then the Bob Davis, that item is going to be coming up soon, so. Thank you, guys. Anybody else? Yes.
I didn't have time to sign up.
Yeah, go ahead and speak, yes.
All right.
Identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes, so.
I'm Chris Koenig. I'm at 3612 Glen Lane, and I'm also here as representing the Middleton Sustainability Committee. I'm here tonight to thank the mayor and the Common Council for adopting a 2018 budget that includes a new part-time sustainability coordinator position. With the results of the referendum, this position is an important step toward addressing the residents' request for Middleton to be a leader in addressing climate change. And I'd also like to speak in support of extending the contract with WEC to add an additional $2,000 in already budgeted funds in order to have WEC complete a full draft update of the sustainability plan. Our committee has been working hard to complete the goals in the plan, and over 60% have been completed. We're looking forward to setting new goals that truly make Middleton a leader. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else who hasn't registered and want to speak? Okay, I'm going to close that part of the Common Council. And now the next item is the approval of the consent agenda.
I would like to move to remove the minutes from the consent agenda.
Okay. Need a second?
You don't need
No,
a
we
second.
need a second.
Oh, okay.
I'll move approval of what's left.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So you want to,
I just have a correction in the minutes. Under ordinance number 2, I moved over the phone for that, not Richard.
okay, do we need a second here or not?
What does she
Good
say?
job.
Gotta get it in there.
I read them.
Okay, anybody has the opposition to this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that part of the motion is passed, so. Okay, so now we are on to agreements. Agreement with Wisconsin Energy Conservation Corporation for consulting services for sustainable city plan update $2,000.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So the next one is the budget transfer of $12,500 and agreement amendment with Non and Associates for design, engineering, and grant management services for Cedar Ridge Neighborhood Mill and Overlay.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance, which was to authorize a 2017 spend of the 2018 plan. This is a budgeted item in 2018.
Okay.
All we're doing is moving the spending authority into 2017.
I'll second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then all those in favor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Discussion. Sean, are you still here?
Yes.
You are still here. I know you gave a wonderfully detailed notice in your memorandum as to why Middleton Beach Road, this won't work for Middleton Beach Road. There has been some changes at our DNR and some different items in the budget. And have we approached the DNR about this at all, or is this, I mean, just I want to double check that this cannot be used.
You mean subsequent to the determination
Yes.
of the DNR that this was not grant eligible?
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that we went back to them after that determination, no.
I would like just maybe one last double check with them, because as you can see with Joe Parisi, we're really looking at phosphorus and wetlands, and when we're looking at that stream along Middleton Beach Road, I mean, it's not a moving wetland anymore. That stream does not move.
I think there were two issues. One was depth to groundwater compared to infiltration, and the other was about a wetland and some species associated with that ditch off to the west side of the road. But we can ask them again.
I don't think the groundwater issue will have resolved.
That's probably true. I would make a motion, amend the motion to just double check for the sake of Middleton Beach Road. Would anyone be amenable to that friendly addition?
Can we just ask staff to do that? I mean, I don't want to hold up the project, though, if we're waiting for DNR,
just
because that could
asking
take
both.
months. I don't want that to happen.
That's fair. Ask.
Okay.
That'd be fair.
And I just have a quick question too, just to make sure I understand how this works. It's listed in here as mill and overlay, but can you actually just mill down an existing road and turn it into porous? Or I assume you have to pretty much go down to the base layer, right? Even though it's listed here as kind of a mill and overlay thing, the portion that's porous would be a total replacement. Is that a correct?
It will need a completely different cross-section than the mill and overlay project. It's just, we started this game as a mill and overlay project, and because some grant funding might be eligible and useful, we want to look at a different cross-section for that portion of the project.
Great. Thank you for confirming that for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to call, the motion is for the budget transfer, and all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. So the next one is general engineering service contracts.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance.
Second.
Any questions or any discussion?
Is there a second?
Yeah, there was, Joanna was the
I'm
second.
sorry.
Yes. Okay, so all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So the next one is the stormwater management system maintenance agreement with Oak Ridge Senior Apartments on 7635 Lisa Lane.
Approval. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So the next one is Dane County purchase of services agreement for senior center case management and nutrition program.
Move approval as recommended by finance.
Second.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, just to be
Yes.
clear, this is a massive document, but
40
part of it is the HIPAA Business Associate Addendum, and everyone understands that the motion is inclusive of the addendum, since
Yeah.
it's a separate document.
Thought that's what I said.
Oh, I didn't, sorry. Okay.
Kidding.
Okay, with that part added, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So the next one, we have to go to the CSM plat first, right? We can't really buy the land unless we go to the plat, right?
Oh, no, we still gotta do the offer to purchase on agreement.
You do this first, or do you do this first? Because that is 30 cents map for that same land.
Well,
Which one would come first? This or
okay,
that?
okay, let's move them, as
Okay.
Mike says, yes.
Okay, so we are going to skip this item. We're going to come back to item number 6 a little bit later. So we have to approve the CSM plat, and this is item number 1, certified survey map, Pheasant Creek, LLC, J.T. Klein and Company.
Move
6.
approval.
Second.
Okay, any
Could
questions?
you just indulge me in explaining why we have to approve the plat first before the offer to purchase?
Because, well, I will let you explain. So it's, has to be divided in 2 different plats before you buy it.
Well,
No.
Mike, it was your idea, so,
Well, actually, it was the mayor's idea.
oh,
I don't know whether it's necessary or not.
Can you buy it before it's divided into plats?
well, the
Why does
offer
it need to be
purchase certainly
divided into
recognized
plats?
what the land was that was being purchased.
Okay, well, we are on it, so we have the motion and the second. It shouldn't make much difference. Any,
Well, it does make a difference. I mean,
Okay. Okay, so you want to take the other one first?
You should table this and go back to 6, and then come back
Is
to...
that what you want to do?
Fine with me.
Okay, all right. So we need a motion,
So I'll
right?
motion to table this.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling this until later?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so let's take offer to purchase properties for a Pheasant Branch Conservancy Trailhead, 608 Acquisition LLC, and those 3 properties for $475,000. Need a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any question or comment?
As recommended by finance.
Okay, as recommended by finance. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Motion,
Roll call.
Roll call.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
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 Aye.
Aye.
so the motion passes 5-3, so. Okay, now we are on to, do we need to untable it or we just go to this?
No.
No.
Take it off the, it's,
Okay, so we are on to CSM plat, certified survey map of the Pheasant Creek LLC.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I call, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it's 5-3, the same. Yep, yep. Now we are on to miscellaneous. Capital Asset Policy, Finance Director Bill Burns.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance.
Second.
Okay, any questions or any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for capital asset policy say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So the next one is the concept review of Dane Arts Mural at Salt Storage Shed Retaining Wall on 4330 Parmenter Street. It's only for concept review.
Approval.
Second.
Okay, any questions or any discussion?
I'm sure Abby can talk about this more.
Abby, you want to say anything?
And I would like you to. As I recommended that this come before council as well as planning committee. And did you send it anywhere? Planning and council only, right?
Just planning and council, yes.
Because before we go any farther as an arts committee, I think it's important that you guys are either behind us or not. So, yeah, take it away.
So the idea of a public art project at the retaining wall of the mock salt storage shed was previously discussed. And I think the Arts Committee made a recommendation for a budget of $50,000 to be included for the project, and that was denied by the Common Council. And so we learned about what Dane Arts Mural Arts was doing in the county, and the Arts Committee reached out to them, and ultimately we ended up meeting with a couple of representatives of DAMA and learned about their projects, and we learned that they actually already have one mural in Middleton that we weren't aware of at Sauk Trail Elementary School. And so what they do, they have 3 lead artists that they work with contractually, and then the artists lead mural projects that are actually fabricated and installed by students. And they were looking for a site in Middleton to do a large-scale mural. And they've already spoken with the principal at Clark Street Community School about doing a mural. And so they asked us for potential locations. We gave them a few sites. We told them about the wall behind the skate park, the mock salt storage shed wall, and a couple other ideas. And they really like the mock wall. It would be a huge project for them if they were to cover both the entire south face of the wall and the entire east elevation. And so it remains to be seen how that would work.
Some of the ideas that came up at Plan Commission were to actually just have the mural sort of fade off and to not try to cover the entirety of the walls. We've talked about ideas for themes for a mural there. It could be what makes a good neighbor, or it could be, something more related to what actually goes on in the Municipal Operations Center, because the average person probably doesn't know that's where, our parks crew and utility crew and public works crew store all their vehicles. That's where our recycling center is. So there are a lot of ideas that are being kicked around. Dama applied for a mural successfully with the Madison Community Foundation, and that was a $10,000 grant. And then we also received a donation of $1,000 from Julianne Jatsak and Mike Davis. And so we have $11,000. We think that the project probably will cost more than $11,000, but we're not requesting funding, at least at this time, from the City Council. The Arts Committee has an annual operating budget of $5,000, and they may be willing to contribute their operating funds to complete the project. But I think what Alder Hedrick suggested was maybe before we get that far down the road of actually having them cost out a mural and start working more closely with the students at Clark Street, maybe we should get your buy-in first conceptually to see if you even support the idea of having a mural there, if you have any particular themes you would like the students to explore, and if you have any other ideas for the project.
Thank you, Abby. Any questions for Abby? First, Joanna, and then Howard. And then
Abby, did you consult with Sean?
She did.
Right.
And Sean was in favor.
Okay.
Okay, Howard, and then Susan.
I was just going to say, did you consult with Public Works? But you are Public Works, so I would just...
Advocates for the arts in Middleton are in the Public Works Department.
I know.
Who knew? And not the police department. Go figure.
I would just suggest you send it off to the Public Works and have them take a look at it.
Susan?
Yeah, Abby, I was just going to say, I like the Plan Commission's idea of having it sort of taper, fade out on the ends.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to approve the concept review for the Dane County Mural Arts on Salt Storage, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously.
Could I suggest that that resolution at the end of the agenda be moved up? I know we have a few people
Okay.
here for that.
All right.
And we have a revised draft of that that was placed
Yes. Yes.
at your table.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll jump the gun and just say the only differences between the one you had before and the one you have now is to fill in all the blanks in the dates.
Tell me how much you need.
Okay, so we are on to the last item on the agenda, the resolution 2017-38, Pheasant Branch Road, vacation at 6720 Frank Lloyd Wright Avenue.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
That's quite.
Okay, so the motion passes. All right, so go out and have a dinner or drinks or whatever. So.
Would be good.
All right, we are now back to planning and zoning. And the first item on the agenda is the urban greenway area study. So Jeff is going to make some short presentation.
Okay. So this is on the agenda tonight for approval, or hopefully for approval, for your consideration, but we wanted to just take 5 to 10 minutes just to go over the plan again real quick, because I know some of you haven't seen it since our last retreat, which was last winter, and then others haven't seen it at all with the new council. So I'm Jeff Maloney with Vanderwall and Associates, consulting planner, landscape architect. We work with the city on TIF planning and implementation. So it's kind of a long meeting, so I just want to take 5-10 minutes just to go over the project. 3 things: the timeline, the key findings of the document, not all 70 pages in 45 minutes. And then the edits that we've made over the last year, just so you understand. I know you get a lot of paper, and I give you 16 pages of edits, so I'll summarize those so you don't have to try to figure out every little piece of the document that was edited. So we started the project in May, June of 16, where we started to talk to stakeholders, which were property owners, Welton, Erdman. Talked with different property owners within the city. ProBuild, we talked with different committees, Golf Committee with Jeremy Kabalka, who's been very helpful in this project. And then we came back in November of 16, so about a year ago, and presented the draft plan. Did that at the retreat. And then over the last year, we've been going to committee. That was referred back to committee, working through some of the issues with the committees, and hopefully we've done that and come to an agreeable document. And then the last point there was last week when Plan Commission recommended approval to this council. So just so you know, and some of you, I'm sorry, you've seen this a few times, but if you aren't aware of where the study is, the southwest part of the city, there's the Beltline, there's University Avenue. So the area where we have some redevelopment opportunities and some even expansion opportunities of the city, the project included Greenway Station, Greenway Center, Pleasant View Road expansion project, which was a big impetus of this planning project, which is now underway. Parts of the town, even though we know that that's not annexed, we wanted to start to think about what are the opportunities for that area and talk with the property owners to know what their plans were. And the golf course to the south. The purpose of the study was, one, to define the greenway. What is the greenway? And we talked quite a bit about that. The reason we wanted to define that is because right now it's used for many different uses, conveyance, there's a lot, stormwater, recreation, natural areas. There's a lot of different groups in the city that are involved in the greenway, but there's no document that sort of holistically identifies it and plans it. Identify economic development opportunities for the area, especially down by Greenway Station, Greenway Center. Do future land use plan and preservation areas, and then also recommend public infrastructure and improvements and recreational opportunities that go beyond what are already there. So just real quickly, I know we've shown this map before. The study area is down here, but the first part of the project was to identify Middleton as a greenway city. So when you overlay all the different parkland and county parkland and conservation areas that you already have in the city, basically through the great work of you all have been able to go through from all the way from the golf course through the Confluence Pond, Conservancy, all the way to Governor Nelson State Park, where it's a continuous strip of greenway. So you truly are a greenway city. You've grown around that greenway. It's become an important asset, and we learned that talking through with the stakeholders how important it is. Key locations in the city are all adjacent to the greenway. I think it really brings, it's a great asset to the community and is one of the reasons why Middleton is such a great place to live. We talked in the document about the roles of the greenway, social and environmental, recreation, conveyance, habitat for animals and flora and fauna. Those are pretty easy to understand, but the economic benefit we didn't know. We kind of knew. We had a hunch talking with developers and business owners in our TIF meetings, but when we were able to actually go in and talk with them, we realized that people are locating in Middleton because of this greenway system. Being adjacent to it provides their employees places for breaks. It's great for job retention and job attraction, and people are looking for high-tech companies that we have here, adjacent to recreation, also adjacent to sort of the highly sustainable mixed-use developments that we have, not only downtown but in Greenway Station. So why formalize the greenway? I think the second point is really there's no document or committee that talks about it as a group, and that's one of the implementation steps, is to make sure that any improvements that are done in any part of this system are talked about as a large group and don't impact each other. So just quickly about the economic development opportunities that were in the document. Won't go through them in detail, but largely the area around the Greenway Station was identifying areas for business expansion, which we wanted to start implementing. Energy reliability and technology district, the concept of battery backup storage, and actually creating a new business park where we have renewable energy all in the same meter and have backup batteries instead of big diesel generators. We've started to talk about that a bit as a group, and we've started to talk about that with our energy provider. Maintaining the golf course, preserving that, expanding. If you haven't been up to the golf course and you don't golf, just go up there and see the view. It's pretty amazing. It's a great civic place, even if you don't golf. It's a great place to go up and have a burger and check it out. Jeremy's been working very hard to expand some of the uses up there. Expanding the greenway whenever we can to add to this system, whether it fits, but it must fit a social, environmental, or economic role. And then infill of Greenway Center. You've already been seeing that with the housing to make it a more sustainable neighborhood, which was always the goal. So now that we have retail, to infill it with residential. Future land use, I won't go into a lot of detail because you've seen the document, but this is where the Energy Reliability District could be, high-tech business development, infill opportunities, golf course, potentially expanding the greenway out north of the golf course for the sports training center, which I'll talk about in a second. We talked with Erdmans, we talked with Weltons, learned what their plans are, and as opposed to the previous Erdman proposal for well and septic residential development, the current plans for this are to keep it in permanent open space and recreation and agriculture, which we didn't know when we started. For public infrastructure and recreation, what we identified in this planning process was that, well, one, the conflict between uses up by the golf course with bikes and golfing, and largely had to do with unloading and loading bikes and where uses occur, and really they aren't really connected very well. So I think through the planning process we could try to relieve that, especially parking areas and trailheads. This plan recommended relocating the bike park trailhead to another location to free up parking for golf, because that is a conflict. As we talked with the owner of this, which is Mr. Dan Erdman, we realized the plans for the sports training facility, which are now public. When we originally did this document, it wasn't quite public, so we didn't talk about the Olympic connection and the cross-country skiing. So the document calls the sports training center. But through this planning process, we realized, well, if there is an opportunity to put parking here, we could relocate the bike trailhead and provide more connection to the bike trail for those users, cross-using potential cross-country cross-uses of these sites. And we didn't know that until we started this project. This is just a view that we did early with Yuri, if you know Yuri Gusev, about how that development could occur. Essentially, it would be a training center for Olympic athletes for cross-country skiing. Many of you have been working on this, and it could be a huge opportunity for the city. Again, we didn't highlight it too much in the Greenway document because it wasn't public when we started. Other public improvements were just creating that parkway connecting from Pleasant View Road through to that development as a secondary access, even though this development with primary access would be off 14, which we make sure we tell Yuri every time we see him. Pleasant View Road impact, we wanted to get ahead of this planning process, especially if it impacts any of the other city uses such as the golf course, and preliminarily it looked like it may, so we wanted to make sure that the golf course advisory committee was aware of that, Jeremy was aware of that, and then the recommendation in the first draft of this plan was to potentially hire a golf course architect to be to represent the golf course in this planning process for the road. The last step was implementation. Again, we listed some funding strategies, arguing that the Greenway is an economic asset to the community. It made an argument for TIF being used for some improvements in the Greenway, as long as it's within the district. Establishing that oversight committee, it could be Plan Commission, could be council, but just the point is that we want to make sure if improvements are done in this system, that sustainability knows about it, parks, conservancy lands, water resources, everyone at least is represented at those large-scale decisions, not the small ones. So, I said I would go over that quickly. I could talk a long time about that. But text edits for your 16 pages of memos there. First round of edits we did was just preserving some golf views, because we had to clarify that. That's in the first memo you saw. Changing some language on site history in the golf course land use designation. Then we wanted to further emphasize golf course protection and preservation. And Jeremy makes a very good explanation of the golf course experience. and then how, when you're a user of that site and you pay to use that site, you need to have an experience where it's protected and, you have a good experience in nature. So we further clarify that in the language. Our intention was never to impede on the golf course at all, so we didn't really put that in there, but now we better clarified that as an important part of the greenway. Separate golf and bicycle uses. We further added language to the document about that, and then we included this map, which Mike and Bill and Matt and Jeremy and others have worked on, clearly identifying the city parcel. So this is the city parcel is the white parcel, 305 acres. The red area is non-golf use, and then the rest of the remainder of the site is golf use. So working through a land area that golf can continue to operate and can expand for the parking and other needs that they have. And then since we do have this opportunity to relocate some parking for bicycles, we could reuse the bike pump track space for golf and then move those uses to the north. This is just a view of that from the plane. So this area would all be in golf, including the bike pump track and the expansion area to the north. So they've done a study about additional parking needs that they have for that. The last parts of the changes in the text were really just about graphics, updating the location of the sports training center, changing trails whenever Yuri changes trails, and then adjusting the existing trails on the golf course for cross-country skiing. Another area that we've modified in the text, or one of the last areas, is this access to the golf, as we discussed in committee and at Plan Commission, and everyone agreed the primary desire would be to keep access where it is now, its current location, and then if there is a parkway that connects over to the training facility, to have that connect up on the kind of north side there. We had two other options to consider if Pleasant View Road would impact the golf course, just as options to consider for the golf course architect. Those weren't supported, so we just put them in the appendix and just had them there for reference. But the document clearly says this is the preferred road alignment and location. And again, the last map was just editing some of the trails in here that were just off a little bit from different sources of data, and now we have those in GIS and we shared that with the city. So I think we have a better trail location map for future planning. So again, that's probably more than 10 minutes, sorry, but I just wanted to go over the document and some of the edits so you knew what was in your packet.
Any questions for Jeff? Yes, Susan.
Jeff, could you explain more about this oversight committee? Or how formalized has that been? Or if it hasn't been, who will formalize it?
I guess that's up to you, not to throw it back at you. But the idea, it could be a separate committee. You have a lot of committees in Middleton and a lot of people involved. Maybe it's just a plan commission. But the day one when we started this project, we knew that we needed better communication between some of the users and representatives and experts that you have here. So one group doesn't do something in this greenway system and it affects another user. So just a way that maybe it just comes to Plan Commission or as a separate agenda item or a heading, but I think that's one of the clear
it's needed.
Results
it's
of this.
Just so this document wouldn't formalize that.
It wouldn't formalize it. No, it just suggested to consider it, and then it just saying have it a representative from each of your existing committees.
And then I have another comment that's sort of an edit, and I think it was in the version that I read on the web. You were talking about excursion trains.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer have, whatever it is, the Polar Express. We don't have that, or that they have not contracted with the city.
Oh, the
so it needs to be in past. It needs to be
yeah.
past tense.
Oh, right. Yep, that's another edit.
Thank you, Susan. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we need a motion to approve the urban greenway area study as it is in its final form.
I'd make a motion to approve the urban greenway area study.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, I call all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. The second item is the recommendation for public input process for downtown plaza.
I'll move approval. It's recommended by finance, which was to break this into two motion dollars and then a second motion to have members of council forward to Abby their ideas on how to make this work.
Second.
Any discussion, any questions? Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Now, the next one is the general implementation plan for Bob Davis Inspire Early Childhood Learning Center on 5821 Uncle Road. This is in town of Westport. And it's already approved by the Middleton Westport Joint Commission as well as the Plan Commission.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of this motion to approve this GIP say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next item is pre-annexation agreement with
We got to do the ordinance first.
the ordinance first.
Oh, yeah.
This is a new agenda.
Right, but this is tied to the GIP.
Oh, okay, so I do this first?
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, so we have to go to the ordinances. There's a first reading. Final action may be taken upon approval of the motion to suspend rules under section 1.07 of Middleton General Ordinances. Item number 1, ordinance to rezone lands in the Middleton Westport Joint Planning Area from agricultural to planned development district.
I move we suspend the rules and do final passage of that ordinance.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Yes, Mike.
Just to clarify, because I think, well, I'm not sure, is this not for the Inspire development?
Yeah, it is inspired. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So what do we take next one?
Yeah.
Go back to
Let's
here?
go back, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we are back to item number 4 under planning and zoning. That is the pre-annexation agreement with the Saint Somewhere Incorporated, Red Tail Acres. Who wants to take it?
I volunteer Mark.
Okay.
I think there are still several issues that need to be resolved, and I think this is problematic for us to do this under pre-annexation agreement, but I'll give it a shot. I'll make a motion that we approve the pre-annexation agreement with the following stipulations. Prior to annexation, that the stormwater management plan is approved, that the access issues on Highway Q are approved, that the planting and berming along the North Lake budding properties is approved, and also that we review the density. The developer has submitted 2 plans. Concept 2 is 95% of what is really, I think, is ideal. So the only issue that we have with concept 2 is that the first 2 plots abutting lot 45 right off of Q, when we had this meeting 2 weeks ago, there was discussion about having a single family or a single unit there. So I would move that we accept that as the concept. So concept 2 with lots 1 and 2 as a single unit.
Yeah, the revised draft, the agreement took out the concept plans completely, so you
So there's
weren't
no
appro-
concept plan in the,
There's no concept plan. So my view was, I asked for that to be removed because it included concept 1. And I know there's a concept 3 out there as well. So I think we really don't need to deal with the concept plan.
except that the pre-annexation agreement stipulates several places that we're agreeing to a concept plan.
No, it just says they desire to develop the property into a concept plan, but it's not attached anymore. This was amended hastily to get this on tonight's agenda, but there is no concept plan attached anymore. It's gone.
Okay, so what we'll be approving will be the pre-annexation agreement.
Well, except, I'm sorry, Larry, it may not be attached, but it is referenced, right? In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th whereas, it's suggesting that the city and developer approve it, which complies with the concept plan. Okay, so if it's by reference.
I understand that. This was amended hastily because there are issues with getting this property. The developer is not the current owner and has to acquire the property, and there's a deadline by December 31st. And so we took out, we thought, all of the references to an attached concept plan because we recognized that was controversial. I realize that the words still appear, but there's no document attached. And I guess my recommendation is that the development of that property should be subject to whatever the Plan Commission and the city decides is appropriate. So there's no specific plan attached, and if you want to amend those words out, that's fine.
Then I'll amend my motion to further stipulate that there is no concept attached to the pre-annexation agreement.
Correct.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
Any discussion, any questions? Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
Just, could I ask for a clarification at the staff level? So are you striking the whereas that pertains to concept plan where the third whereas clause and the fifth whereas clause, and then number 6 where it says the role of the concept plan? Or actually, that can probably stay because it says that will be refined and amended from time to time with mutual consent.
Motion stated that there is no approved concept plan.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't think we need to change the agreement.
Okay, and I just wanted to elaborate on my email that I sent today, too. I simply was asking that if there's a desire for a certain concept, that the council make us aware at the staff level what that preference is. And if you wish to not do that at this meeting, that is, of course, your choice. But that was why I sent the email today that I did, because the Plan Commission made one recommendation that was on the books, and that was the action that came to you tonight as modified by our city attorney. So if you're deleting the concept altogether, I guess that's a way of stating your position.
That's what we're doing, right? Okay. All right, that's true, Mark. So now we have only one thing left here. This is the ordinance to rezone lands from single-family residential to planned development district infill general implementation plan Gulf residential redevelopment project on Gateway Street.
Move approval.
Okay, any questions, any discussion? All those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you to everyone. Wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I need a motion now to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.